Time to go back to the days of ancient role play. Time for another dungeon tale. Clay at Terminally Nerdy put out another dungeon tale about his biggest bad character he had put in a campaign. I enjoyed it very much, especially that the bad guy was named Vladimir. In response, he asked me to tell about the worst death or big bad that I inflicted on somebody else. So this is going to be a tale about that. In the last video, I had spoken about a Monty Hall campaign known as Warped Greyhawk. We eventually got rid of that campaign and started playing a by the rules legit game. As I got older, I met people who were interested in learning how to play tabletop games. And one of the things I always found to be the most difficult about learning a new game was the actual character creation. Though fun at later stages when you first start, it's a little mind blowing and kind of tedious. So, to help with this problem, these new players, I handed them what I called refugee characters. These were the characters that were left over from the years of gameplay that came before. Most of these characters were very Monty Hall. Some of them had been henchmen of Elric and Sotha back at Warped Greyhawk. And something needed to be done about the fact that they were completely overpowered. The group of characters I'm going to talk about tonight starts with Tamarack, a human warrior. I believe he was 15th level. His big thing was his +5 full plate armor and his +5 battle axe. He was styled after Genghis Khan or in the Mongolian trend. The second character was known as Radagast, and he was a race called Fraint. This came from an old set of rule books. He was basically an alien race, and their race had crashed onto the planet and degenerated in most part to the same technological and knowledge level as the people that live on the planet. His big thing was he was 20th level, and he carried a +3 two-handed Vorpal sword. And the last character was a blatant ripoff of another friend's character. Her name was Liza, and she was a drow, I believe 15th level assassin, 15th level wizard. And if I remember right, this one carried Black Razor. So these characters were overpowered, but they served their purpose. They taught these new players about different classes. It gave them an idea of where to start for role playing a character, since I was able to give them a description of what their characters were about. They learned how to use the character sheets, the combat, and had some fun playing it. While playing overpowered characters is quite fun, it gets rather hard on the DM, and it's not really a good sense of the game. A lot of a good Dungeons and Dragons game is building your character up to power. These people did become quite attached to their characters, so I had to come up with a way to strip them down to more normal levels. Well, luckily, TSR did a good job at providing me with a few adventures to do that in. One would be the ruins of Myth Draenor, and the second would be the Ravenloft game system. The ruins of Myth Draenor were in Faerun, and it was an ancient elven city that had been the capital of Cormanthor Forest. Of course, nobody can have anything nice for long. A horde of demons and monsters descended upon the city long ago and destroyed it. And in the thousands of years since then, it was pretty much a battleground between various groups of monsters and bad guys and good guys, and a constant lure for adventurers since there was all this loot everywhere. Awesome, ancient, unbelievable loot. One problem is the city is infested with groups of monsters and bad guys and good guys all fighting over it the whole time. I instituted an old rule that said if you failed a saving throw to something like a fireball or a lightning bolt, that you would have to save for all the items that you're carrying. You have a bag on your hip, roll for that. Oh, it burned up. What was in that bag? Oh, your extra magic rings. Well, let's roll for each of those. Oh, darn, two of them melted. This was a handy rule to help strip some of this extra gear off of these characters. And Myth Draenor was a great place to do it. As I said, there was constant battles going over different parts of the city. So when a group would wander into town and start a fight with one random encounter, which were rolled pretty frequently, if I remember, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Once the fight would start, it would make noise. Well, that would attract the attention of another group of monsters just around the corner, and they would come and join the battle, because usually nobody gets along in this town. And then this could go on forever, because the more noise you make, the more attention you attract, and the bigger and nastier the stuff that shows up most times. Now, a good example of this was this monster. I believe it was a bone naga, and they used to travel in packs of up to a dozen. So you could randomly roll up 12 of these snake like creatures that had a human skull on the top of their head, and their bodies were bone, like vertebrate. And they could do lightning bolts. So, right in the middle of battle, it was quite possible for 12 of these things to show up and launch 12 lightning bolts across everything that's fighting, usually ending the fight, but giving lots of opportunity to clean items off of characters. So I'd given these new players these three powerful characters, Tamarack, Radagast, and Liza, and I needed something for them to do right away. So I happened to have available an old character, an NPC villain that I had made up to face the super powerful characters from the past campaign. His name was Saruman, yes, from the books. And he was an 80th level mage, and he would fly around in this tower, yes, Orthonk, and basically cause trouble. I had made this character to destroy the old school Warped Greyhawk characters, and it pretty much offended the players that were going to go against him. So I said, what the heck? I'm going to send these three Uber characters against the Uber's dumbest NPC that I had ever created. As it turns out, the three characters hacked their way through all of Super Saruman's minions, faced him. At least one of them got completely assassinated by the first magic missile he let off, which I believe sent out 80 missiles. And then they killed him. No problem. So I'm not sure what the old group was worried about. So these three characters found themselves in possession now of Saruman's great tower. And it turns out the way the tower would fly or go ethereal or change planes was through an artifact I had named the Orthonk Stone. And when they tried to control this stone, it ended up controlling them instead. It was some ancient, horrible, malevolent artifact. So they were kind of stuck in a bind. So introduce my NPC character I had to lead these adventurers onto their further glory. He was a lich. I had named him Erdrick, and it was a total play on my old Elric character. Now, they had known Erdrick off and on through their careers with other players, but I kind of just introduced him as somebody who was interested in this funky tower that had appeared and was seeing what was going on. Well, the group decided to trust Erdrick, the Lich, because he could control the artifact. Liches are immune to mind control, and since he was my NPC and I deemed him of great enough power, he could be immune to an artifact's mind control. So basically, he could drive their tower. On top of that, he was very powerful himself, had access to some pretty cool magic items and creatures that could help them. And he had great knowledge of things and many things that the players would be interested in doing. Lucky them. Of course, one of the first things he came up with was this awesome city myth Draenor. So off they went to the plain of Faerun. And I believe they picked some obscure place to park the tower. And off go the three adventurers to face the horrors of Myth Draenor. Well, they did well. They were powerful, but they did lose a great amount of gear. Portable holes are very sad things when they fail their saving throws. Eventually, they discovered a library, and in this library, they found a book after probably slaughtering their way through a horde of beta zoo. But they couldn't figure out how to read the book. Guess who knew exactly how to read the book? Erdrick. So they brought the book back to the tower. Upon translation, apparently the book is describing the use of the many portals that are in Myth Draenor. That's one thing that keeps Myth Draenor so dangerous, is everywhere there are open gates to all kinds of different wild and crazy dangerous places that are constantly letting new things come into the city. One of these was identified in the book, and it led to a place that assured the characters of great adventure and even better treasure than they've been finding. Of course, it turns out this place was located in Ravenloft, but I didn't tell them that. Ravenloft was a gothic horror campaign. It had fairly intricate stories that were very dark and dreary, akin to, say, Dracula or Frankenstein. It had several realms that were each ruled by its own lord. There was a very Dracula like lord, and a very Frankenstein like lord, and several others. Pretty much the players were supposed to be kept in the mood of hopelessness, terror, horror, and just the feeling that they're way in over their heads. These lords of each of these realms were very powerful, but they were all cursed to be there. Each one had his special thing. The choice I made for a realm to send these characters to was Darkon. It's ruled by a lich named Aslan, and his curse is being trapped in Ravenloft. His biggest thing in life is to seek knowledge and power and items and understand them and become even more powerful, which he is very limited at this point, being stuck in Ravenloft. I myself decided to take an item from my past gaming, Mornblade from the Elric series. Very powerful sword, a demon forged into a blade, and I let out the rumor that Aslan kept it in his castle. It was a great lure for just about anybody I ever told that story to. So I had chosen one of the official modules from the Shadows. And in this module, without giving away a whole lot, the party is basically incapacitated, stripped of their stuff, made to run around in circles for Aslan, and they can only pray that they somehow escape. Well, in this case, Tamarack and Radagast and Liza managed to get in, played through the game, and escaped with their very skins on their back. Really didn't end up with much of their gear left. Monty Hall gear issue solved. So, to get help, they returned back home to their tower and conferred with Erdrick, who was willing to re-gear them. Plenty fair since he was having complete run of this beautiful tower of theirs. At this point, the players pretty much had one thing on their mind, and that was to go back, get revenge, and mostly to get their gear back. They really missed their stuff. It was easy enough to get back. The assassin mage had access to a teleport. Of course, I allowed that to do the trick. With the new gear that they had gotten from their buddy Erdrick, they were able to fight their way into the castle and finally make it to Aslan's treasure trove, a room filled with all kinds of stuff, including a bunch of their original gear. Too bad it was a trap. So in the treasure room, of course, the gear that each character could identify that was theirs was on a separate table in three different parts of the room, along with the sword Mornblade hanging on the wall above where Radagast's gear appeared to be. So of course Radagast goes over and grabs Mornblade, two-handed sword. That was his specialty. He was ready to go. But as soon as he did that, it split the room into three sections. Walls of force had come up, leaving only one door for each of the characters to exit the room from. And at the same time, a horde of skeletons came charging through the door. This was my warning to the characters that they should run, and run very quick. But they decided to smash the puny skeletons and waste their time getting away. Now, the sword Mornblade was known for being able to draw the souls out of the enemies you use it on. The next wave of monsters that came through the door kind of do the same thing. They were negative plane creatures. That means that when they touch you, they drain some of your life force. And unfortunately, Mornblade, if used on one of these creatures, has a reverse effect. It will either kill its user or drain half of their life energy. Poor Radagast. He hit one of these wraiths with it and lost half his levels. Sword is completely useless in this situation. The other two characters I personally didn't really care about, but they ended up fighting their way out of the room and running. Radagast stayed and he got a hold of his two-handed Vorpal sword. And he fought and fought and fought, but eventually he fell. The other two characters who smartly decided to run away, actually I allowed to escape for a time. At least so that we could wrap up the game for the night. Later on, I pretty much set up encounters. The assassin wizard Drow, she ran into beholders, probably three of them. Didn't take long to take her down. And the other guy basically just got overwhelmed by undead, just like poor Radagast. So the characters were once again captured by Aslan. And it wasn't completely the end of those characters, but the only adventures I ever made for them afterwards were as slave clones doing something that Aslan wanted. At this point, I'm sure it looks like the big bad is this Aslan character, when actually it was my character, Erdrick, the NPC. From the minute he saw that tower and realized that he could control it, the other three characters were meat. Every adventure that he sent them on, every little clue, every little hint to find something more powerful was an attempt to lure them to their permanent deaths so that there would be no claim to this tower whatsoever. So this attempt to tone down three characters to play in my campaign ended up cursing them to be damned forever in Ravenloft. I guess they should have taken a hint the first time. Well, that's it for this dungeon tale. Clay, how about you tell me about some adventure that you planned and we're really looking forward to playing through, but everything went completely off the rails, whether the characters made it all foobar or you had not considered something which made it way too easy. Um, that sounds good. Anybody else has any stories? Make a video, post it in the comments. I'd like to see them. And the video I'm responding to that Clay made is in the description. You guys have a good week.